I work in a small coffee shop in the center of our town, a typical place. Across the street, a grocery store. Next to it, a pharmacy and a hardware store. After 4 in the afternoon, there are fewer people. So when the last customer walked in that day, I had already started cleaning the counter. He was a man around 40. I had never seen him before. He looked nervous. He kept looking around. "Coffee to go," he said. I nodded. "Which one?" "Any." That was a strange answer. I made a regular black coffee. He paid in cash and placed a small paper bag on the counter. "Put this inside, Heis," he said. I thought it was cookies, but when I picked up the bag, it was heavy. "What is this?" The man looked at me and said quietly, "If I don't come back in 10 minutes, give this to the police." I froze. "Excuse me?" He gave a nervous smile. "Just do it," and walked out. I stood there for a few seconds, then walked to the window. The man crossed the street and entered the grocery store. I looked at the bag and realized that inside it wasn't cookies. I carefully opened it. Inside were 3 things: a key, a small flash drive, and a note. I unfolded it. There was only one sentence written on it. "If something happens to me, do not trust the police." I felt a chill run down my back. I looked at the clock. 3 minutes passed, then 5, then 10. The man did not come back. I looked out the window again, and at that moment, people ran out of the grocery store. A second later, I heard someone scream, and another second later. After the gunshot in the store, there was a strange silence that sometimes happens for a few seconds, as if people haven't yet understood what just happened. Then the screaming began. I ran out of the coffee shop. The doors of the grocery store were open. Several people were quickly coming outside. One woman was crying. Someone shouted, "Call an ambulance!" I walked inside and immediately saw him. The same man. He was lying near the checkout, on the floor. People were standing around him. Someone was holding a phone. Someone was just staring. I didn't see any blood, but I immediately understood. It was very bad. A minute later, a security guard ran into the store. "Everyone back. Nobody touch anything." I slowly walked back outside and suddenly remembered the bag. It was still lying on the counter in the coffee shop. I went back there, and for a few seconds, I just stared at the bag, the key, the flash drive, and the note. "Do not trust the police." I heard the sirens. Police arrived very quickly. Our town is small, so things happen fast here. Within a few minutes, the street was already blocked. Police officers were entering the store, and at that moment, one of them walked into the coffee shop. He looked familiar. I had seen him before. Officer Grant. He sometimes came in for coffee. "Did you see anything?" he asked. I felt my heart begin to beat faster. I looked at the bag, then back at him. "No." That was the first lie of the day. He nodded. "All right. We might need to talk later." I nodded. He walked out, and in that moment I realized one thing. If the note was true, I had just lied to the exact person I wasn't supposed to trust. I closed the coffee shop early. It was easy to explain. A gunshot in the store across the street was reason enough. I took the bag and drove home. The drive took about 10 minutes. The whole town was already buzzing. News spreads quickly. When I walked into my house, the first thing I did was open the bag again. I took the key, a regular metal key, but it had a small metal tag. Engraved on it were the characters B12. I frowned. It looked like a number or a storage unit. Then I took the flash drive. I hesitated for a few seconds, then plugged it into my laptop. There was only one file on it, a video. I pressed play. At first, the screen was dark, then the camera began to move, and I realized it was a recording from a hidden camera. In the video, there was a garage, old concrete floor, and after a few seconds, two men walked into the frame. One of them was Officer Grant. I felt my breath catch. He was handing the other man an envelope. The man opened it. Inside was money, a lot of money. And at that exact moment, the recording stopped. I sat there without moving, trying to understand one thing. The man who had given me the bag knew he might be killed, and he knew that I might accidentally become the only person holding the evidence. But I still didn't understand the most important thing, why I needed the key. I looked again at the tag, B12, and suddenly I remembered. In our town, there is only one place where units are labeled like that, the old storage facility on the edge of town. They rent garage storage units there, and at that exact moment, my phone started ringing. An unknown number. I answered. A male voice said only one thing. You already watched the flash drive. I felt a chill run down my back. Who is this? The voice answered calmly. Now you need to find garage B12. I stayed silent. If you want to understand why that man was killed today. And the call ended. I sat there for several minutes staring at my phone. The unknown number didn't call again. Complete silence. I looked at the key again. The small metal tag, B12. The storage facility with the garages was on the edge of town, about a 15-minute drive. I tried to convince myself that it would be better to just give everything to the police, but then I remembered the video, Officer Grant, the money, and the note. Do not trust the police. I closed the laptop, put the flash drive and the key into my pocket, and walked out of the house. Nights in our town are very quiet. When I drove toward the storage units, the road was almost empty. Only a few street lights and dark houses. After a few minutes, I turned onto a narrow road and saw the fence of the storage facility. It was a large place, a long row of metal garages, each with a number. I parked the car near the entrance. Only one old pickup truck was parked there. The lights on the property were dim. I walked inside and began looking for the number. B01, B03, B05. Metal doors standing one after another. The air smelled like dust and old metal. And then I saw it. B12. I took out the key. For a few seconds, I just stared at the door, then inserted the key into the lock. Click. The door unlocked. I lifted the metal shutter and froze. Inside was a small garage, almost empty. Just an old table, a chair, and a large plastic container. I stepped inside. The light from the corridor barely illuminated the room. I opened the container and immediately understood. This wasn't just a storage unit. Inside were folders, documents, photographs, and several flash drives. I picked up one of the folders. On the first page it said, Internal Investigation. I turned the page and saw photographs, police officers, several familiar faces. Officer Grant wasn't the only one. I quickly flipped through the pages, money, transactions, account numbers, and suddenly I heard a sound, footsteps. Somewhere in the corridor, I froze. Someone was walking toward the garage. The footsteps stopped at the door. The light in the hallway was blocked by a shadow. I slowly turned my head and saw a silhouette. A man stood in the doorway. I couldn't see his face clearly, but I immediately recognized the voice. I knew you would come, I spoke slowly. Who are you? The man stepped into the garage, and only then I saw his face. He was around 30, dark jacket, calm expression. My name is David. I worked with the man who died today. I felt my heart begin to beat faster. Are you police too? He shook his head. No. Journalist. He nodded toward the container. We collected this evidence for almost a year. I looked at the folders. And you think this will help? He answered quietly. This will destroy half of the police department. I paused. Then why did you call me? He looked straight at me. Because now all of this is in your hands. I frowned. This isn't my problem. He nodded. It is now. And at that exact moment, new footsteps echoed in the corridor. This time, several people. And suddenly a familiar voice said, I knew I'd find you here. I felt my heart drop. Officer Grant stood in the corridor, and he was holding a gun. Officer Grant stood in the doorway of the garage. The gun was pointed straight at us. 2 more men stood behind him. Not police. I understood that immediately. They looked like people used to following orders. Grant slowly smiled. I knew the key would lead you here. David beside me tensed. Do you seriously think this is going to end well for you? Grant shrugged. For me? He nodded toward the container with the documents. Look around. All the evidence is here. And everyone who knows the truth, too. His gaze slid toward me. And the only thing I need to do, he slightly raised the gun, is remove a few witnesses. I felt my heart start pounding. David stepped forward. You think anyone will believe your story after today? Grant laughed quietly. I have a badge. I have rank. And I have people who will say you two tried to kill me. I looked at him. Just like you said that man in the store was a robber? Grant went silent for a second. Exactly. David turned to me. What does he mean? I slowly looked at the container. That man. He wasn't random. I picked up one of the folders and opened it. Inside were photographs, several warehouses, truck numbers, and records. These police officers, I said quietly, had been covering the same operation for years. Grant watched me silently. Trucks full of drugs were passing through our town, and nobody checked them. Because you were the ones checking them. David looked at the photos. So, I nodded. The police were running the smuggling themselves. Grant sighed. You have no idea how much money passes through a town like this, I continued. The man who came into the coffee shop worked at the warehouse, and one day he saw police escorting the trucks, not inspecting them, escorting them. David spoke quietly. That's why he started recording. I nodded. And he filmed the money exchange. I looked at Grant. Your exchange. Grant smiled. And? It still won't change anything. I spoke slowly. Are you sure? He frowned. What? I took out my badge and showed it. Federal Bureau. Internal Affairs. Silence filled the garage. David slowly looked at me. You... I nodded. Yes. Grant stood silent for a few seconds, then laughed. That's a bluff. You're a barista, I calmly replied. That's exactly why you never paid attention to me. And at that moment, headlights lit up the storage yard. A second later, voices shouted, Federal agents, drop your weapons. The men behind Grant turned around instantly. Grant stood frozen, looking at me. You, I nodded. We've been investigating you for a year. And today you walked straight into the evidence. A minute later, he was already in handcuffs. A month later, the story became news across the state. 5 police officers were arrested. They were charged with drug trafficking, bribery, falsifying cases, and the murder of an informant. The man who left the bag in the coffee shop knew he might be killed. So he gave the evidence to me, the only person who could finish the case. One evening, David walked into the coffee shop again. "There's still one thing I don't understand," he said. "What?" He sat at the counter. "Why did the informant trust you with the bag?" I smiled. I placed a cup of coffee in front of him. "Because I was the one who asked him to come." "And leave the bag." He froze. "So you—" I nodded. "Sometimes to catch people, you have to let them believe they're in control, and the best place to listen to people is a small coffee shop in the center of town."